It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
On this edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast, we talk about our favorite MLB ballparks and where we would like to go next. Plus, we talk about two legends in the ACC, Mike Krzyzewski and Roy Williams, retiring and how their impact will be missed on the college basketball court. Plus, my interview with Lake Lewis Jr. of the Sports Journey in regards to Washington football team's minicamp so far. All that and so much more coming up next. You're listening to the Kirby on Sports Podcast.
I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
All right. Welcome back to another edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast. Big thanks to our sponsors. We shout them out all the time. Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and our brand new sponsor in Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation. Big thanks to all of our sponsors, Plus Productions by Quet for our music, and Dave Johnson for our intro, as always. We have another jam-packed show for you today. I said it in the intro, but I'll say it again. We have a lot to get to. I will have an interview with Lake Lewis Jr. later on in the podcast discussing mini camps for the Washington football team and how he thinks they will look going into this season. They're still a long way away, but still, football season is right around the corner, and Lake Lewis Jr. of the Sports Journey has it all broken down for us. So looking forward to that. But for the time being, we are pleased to be joined yet again by our lead contributor, co-host Daniel Demski. It has been a while. Our work schedules, that's mostly on my end, but we just haven't been able to get around to record. But Dan, good to see you. Good to hear from you. How you been, sir?
I'm doing well, brother. Thanks for having me back on. It's always a treat to be on the Kirby on Sports Podcast. So I'm happy we could work it out, man. Yeah, it's not just you. Don't just blame yourself. It's work in life, man. You know, it's just busy, and sometimes you just get caught up doing stuff, and it's been too long, but we're back at it again. So that's what matters, man.
Stuff like this. It's just amazing getting to do what we love to do and talking sports. And this is why this podcast has been sticking around for some time now, because I enjoy what I do, and I'm hoping one day it's going to get me to where I want to be. But I just really enjoy all the moments I have on this podcast. But Dan, I'll tell you one thing. I'm going to go off on a little story time really quick. I know you will probably get irritated and upset, but I'm still going to say it. Over Memorial Day weekend, and I believe some of you might have heard this, but I'm going to recant this story and say it again. I was at a wedding about an hour north of Pittsburgh, and on my way back, it was Memorial Day weekend. I'm like, I want to go see the city of Pittsburgh. And God forbid it was not to see PPG Paints Arena. I did stop by PPG Paints, but I wanted to vomit the entire time. But Heinz Field was pretty nice. I stood outside of that, got a picture, and we went to PNC Park, right near the Three Rivers. And might I add, Pittsburgh is a very, very quiet city. It was not that bad to drive around, unlike DC or New York City. I might be making a bad comparison there, but still, Pittsburgh is a pretty big city, but not a lot of traffic, I must say. But anyways, looking at PNC Park, I realized there's a baseball game going on. And I'm like, heck, I turned to my buddy who I was with and I was like, heck, what would it take to get into this stadium to watch the Pirates? Because I know the Pirates suck, but I had no emotional stake. But I mean, we walk around the stadium and I realized there are 2 will call ticket booths open. So I'm like, what the heck? Let's try it. And I mean, me and my buddy, we weren't trying to spend a lot of money, but it ended up $20 for standing room only in a park that was probably 10% capacity. It looked like it because the Pirates do suck. I mean, if me as a spectator get close to catching batting practice ball 3 separate times and missing, it's not a crowded stadium. But anyways, we got in standing room only for $20. And boy, let me say, with no emotional stake in this game, that stadium looks amazing. And that was my first sporting event since the pandemic hit. And we stayed like the 2nd inning through the 8th inning because it was getting sort of late and it was like a 3.5-hour drive home. But I'm telling you, PNC Park, off of my bucket list, it is a beautiful park, hands down.
I love that, man. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about that stadium, and I mean that backdrop is amazing, with the river in the background, and what's the bridge? What's the name of the bridge?
I had it there, but I forget.
Yeah, I'd have to look.
There
it
are
up,
like 4 bridges from
right.
Pittsburgh on one side of the river going down to where all the stadiums are, the Heinz Field and PNC Park.
Right, exactly. But yeah, man, that's really cool. I think I remember now seeing that on social media. So yeah, I was always kind of wondering about that story. But yeah, that's awesome that you were able to just walk up and get tickets, and only $20, man. That's a pretty good deal. I'm sure if that area hasn't gone to 100% capacity in PN Park, I don't know if it was when you went. It just depends on where you are, but I'm sure tickets will be even cheaper, so if you were, once they go to 100% capacity and, let everybody be in the stadium, I'm sure they can get tickets for probably $4 or $5 a person.
Yeah. I mean,
really cheap.
Like I said, I didn't know the COVID protocols. It could have been 100% capacity, but yet again, the Pirates are terrible, like 14 games out of first place. So I don't know. Nobody was wearing masks. And I was like, I mean, are we back to normal? Because I wasn't sure. I wore my mask just to be safe and not so anybody would yell at me or anything like that. But I mean, all in all, I sort of want to make a baseball bucket list because I mean, Nats Park has been the only stadium I've been to up until Memorial Day weekend when I went to PNC Park. And Camden Yards is next on my list. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it is. But what I've heard about Camden Yards, the ballpark is nice, but it's not an area you want to stick around outside of Baltimore.
It depends. The area outside the stadiums is not bad. It's once you get a little further out, where it can start to get a little much. But, yeah, I mean, I think Camden Yards is considered by a lot to be one of the great, baseball stadiums, and kind of the Renaissance stadium of what was to come of the next generation of baseball stadiums that came after it. That's not just my opinion. That's what a lot of people have said. And yeah, it'd be cool to get out there and see a game because I haven't been to Oriole Park since it's been like a decade for me, maybe longer since I've been out there. So, and again, Maryland is either at full capacity or pretty close to it as far as stadiums and all that are concerned. I'm sure if we looked for tickets in August, we could probably get tickets for $10 a piece. They're a bad baseball team. They're the worst team in the American League. They're going to be making tickets super cheap because they want to put butts in the seats. So, we can keep an eye on that and talk about that down the line. But, it's definitely doable, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd ask your thoughts on the minor leaguers wanting to sleep in their cars, but we only have so much time on this program. But it is ridiculous seeing
Yeah.
on your social media what those players are thinking about doing just to play baseball, making $450 a week.
Yeah, they have to work sometimes 2 or 3 other jobs just to pay the bills.
Jeez.
If they're lucky to get cheap housing, if they're lucky to find someone they can um room with and pay it's absurdly cheap amount of money for rent. Yeah, it's just crazy. There's got to be something that Major League Baseball does to chip in to try to help with that situation. I'm not saying we have to pay these guys millions and millions of dollars. They're not major league players, but um, it's kind of been the way it's been in minor league baseball for as long as minor league baseball's been around. Guys just sort of scraping the barrel as far as money is concerned. So something's got to change with that. I'm not an expert in that area, but certainly you can't look at that situation and say it's a good situation. I'll put it that way.
So moving back to what we're originally talking about, ballparks and whatnot. Now that we're slowly but surely seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, tell me, Dan, what's sort of your bucket list for MLB ballparks you would like to visit?
Oh man. I think Fenway Park's always been one for me that I've always wanted to see in person, just because of the history of it. And then recently, just as I've been watching a little more baseball here and there, I think Wrigley Field too. Something about the old classic stadiums that are still standing that to me would mean a lot to see in person. But other than that, I don't really know if there are any other stadiums I could put in there right now. And I know that's a little strange, but Fenway's probably number one. And then I can't put Yankee Stadium up there because not only is it too new, but it's also like insanely expensive to catch a game there in any seat. I don't have that kind of money. I'm kind of on a budget right now. So, yeah, I think if I could get a ticket for cheap for Fenway, because again, Fenway is expensive as well. I'd love to see that first and foremost. But other than that, I don't really have a list to give you. I'm sorry, I don't have anything written out or prepared for this. But well, I don't know. It's just it's something about the classic ballparks that are just intriguing to me.
I can agree with you there. The classic ballparks. My bucket list, it's not in stone, but Camden Yards, since it's closest and it's one of the nicest ballparks out there. Wrigley Field, I would like to see Yankee Stadium just because the Yankees, their rich history. I know it's not the same ballpark. Fenway Park in Dodger Stadium. Dodger Stadium on the West Coast. I mean, that's a really, really nice ballpark. And I would really like to just say, I mean, looking at the views on TV, it's like you have to catch at least one game there. And Giant Stadium, AT&T Park, that would be another nice one to see too, right on the bay where they're hitting home runs over the wall into the river. So, or the cove, whatever it's called. But that's sort of my list. But I mean,
yeah, the Giant Stadium, that'd be cool to see them hit it in McCovey Cove. Yeah, I think that too. And baseball specifically, sorry to cut you off. Baseball specifically has stadiums that mean something. More often than not, like they have a landmark or significance either in them or around them that makes them stand out. I think that's why baseball stadiums are so unique. I'll also throw this one in there, and it's kind of a weird one. I was just thinking about this is Miller Park for me. And I know that's a strange one, but just looking at that stadium, kind of how it's constructed, and it just kind of the retractable roof sort of I don't know, sort of stadiums are intriguing to me. So I think I'd like to see that one in person too. And yeah, when you said the Giants Stadium, I agree with that too. I hadn't even thought about McCovey Cove, but yeah, that is something that's very unique. in baseball. I think that's really all I can think of off the top of my head now. But I'm sure if you gave me more time, I could think of more. But
like the purpose of this sort of have fun segment is there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and this pandemic is going to be going away very soon. And I'm just looking forward to getting out and going to multiple sporting events, enjoying the summer. I have Nats tickets. I just got Nats tickets, hopefully here soon. It's not 100% confirmed, but hopefully I will be going to a Nats game soon. So I'm looking forward to that. Any games on your radar soon, Dan?
Well, today I got an email from Virginia Tech for the football season. They have a 3-game package you can choose. It's like it's less than $200. So I'm interested in that. I think more than anything, I'm looking forward to the NFL season to start. I think you would agree with that too. As far as baseball or any other like summer sports, I don't have anything right now on the docket. But like I said, I think as bad as the Orioles are, I do want to get down there and see a game up there, I guess technically, and see a game at some point this season. And I think mid-August, September is probably a good time to do that. But I think more than anything, I'm looking forward to football season. And hopefully seeing the Ravens play in person, because, again, I haven't been to an in-person Ravens game since like 2015, 2014, something like that. So that was the season that Joe Flacco tore his ACL. And who was it? Shoot. Who was our quarterback that year? Anyway, they were bad. I think that was the year we went like 4-12 or 5-11 or something. And so I definitely want to get there and see the Ravens play at some point this year, if that's possible. I know tickets are going to be insanely expensive, so that's going to be something I keep in mind too. But other than that, man, I'm just looking forward to even just enjoying like just high school football. Going again to Virginia Tech, like I mentioned, will be something that I'm looking forward to doing again soon. I still have a lot of friends that are down there, and more than anything, just I think once we come back 100% in every sport, we're going to see how important fans are to everything once again. And I know I've said this before, but it's going to be, that season's going to be sort of a celebration of the fans, which I think is well overdue and certainly very exciting.
Absolutely. That's Dan. I'm Josh. You're listening to Kirby on Sports Podcast. Much more to come. We'll take a quick commercial break and we'll be back right after this. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just tell you about Regroup Building Services. If you're looking to get your home remodeled, any part of your home, bathroom, kitchen, want to get a deck built, anything like that, Regroup Building Services can just about do everything. And take it from me, because they came in and they remodeled my family's kitchen, and they do a great job. So if you're looking for any sort of home remodeling needs, deck work done, anything of that nature, reach out to my guy Sean Hibbard over at Regroup Building Services today. You can check them out on their website, www.regroupbuildingservices.com, where they do the honeydews that your honey don't. Make sure you tell them Josh sent you. For sports fans living in condominium and homeowners associations, as well as business professionals, when you need a reserve study, PM Plus Reserves has been in business since 1990. Their studies are accurate and easy to understand. Check them out when your association needs a study. www.pmplusreserves.com. You can also contact them at 703-803-8436. Once again, www.pmplusreserves.com. All right, welcome back to the Kirby on Sports Podcast. I'm Josh Kirby, joined by lead contributor and co-host Dan Demski. Find him on Twitter at Dan_Demski97. Dan,
Appreciate that.
This is a topic that we weren't able to officially like break the news on as soon as it got announced and so on and so forth. But it's sort of an end of an era in ACC basketball because we have Roy Williams, the former head coach of North Carolina, who is retiring, and Coach K of Duke just recently announced that he was going to retire. Two coaches, outstanding resumes, and this changes the face of not only ACC basketball, but the NCAA, in my opinion. And I don't want to say necessarily that this will change the shape of the ACC and who could become a dominant team in years to come and who could leave legacies, so on and so forth. I'm not stating that, but I'm just stating the fact that Duke and UNC are their coaches respectfully retired, and they're going to have to find new people. And this changes things for me, in my opinion. I mean, just two legendary coaches. It's an end of an era. Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? The last couple years they've coached, both of these guys. You look at Coach K, 25-6 in 2020, and then last year 13-11. You kind of saw the writing on the wall that it seemed like he was getting tired of coaching at a certain point, and especially with Coach K missing the tournament altogether. It's not a shock that he's retiring at this stage. Also he's 74 years old. He's got kids and grandkids that he wants to be closer to, which totally makes sense. This makes sense to me, and it's interesting because Roy Williams had sort of a rough season in 2020, 14-19, and then this past season 18-11 they make the tournament. I believe they were out early on, if not I believe they were out in the first round, if I'm not mistaken. But so they kind of similar track records those last two seasons where maybe their coaching skills weren't as on point as they'd been in the past, and they just get tired. They get tired of watching their team struggle, especially with both the talent that especially Duke has. I mean, Duke recruits, probably top 3 classes every year for the last 30 years. Carolina, top 5. I mean, that'd be something you have to go look up, but it definitely changes the face of not just college basketball, but sports. I mean, you're talking about two coaches who stayed in their respective positions for so long. It's unheard of, to be quite honest with you. Coach K coaching for 35 years, and that's how many times they've been to the tournament. That's insane. 35 years he's coaching in the tournament. Just insane. And then Roy Williams, 30 years out of 33 years he coached. That's insane, man. You just take that in.
Coach K's record at Duke, 1,097 to 302. Roy Williams all-time 903 to 264. Incredible records all around for both coaches.
And let's talk about sort of the different trajectories. So when Krzyzewski gets to Duke, he's a 73-59 coach at Army. Spent 5 seasons there. Really an unknown. People didn't know who he was. They didn't know how to say his name, which held up true for a lot of career. But he comes in. They struggle the first 3 years he was there. If he was a coach in the modern era, and he came in and coached a school like Duke, and you struggle in the first 3 years, you're going to get canned. You're going to get canned after 2 years, most likely. You know what I mean? So the fact that Duke stuck with him, saw something in him, that administration there, they kept him, and then in year number 4 makes the tournament and has a 24-10 season, and then the rest is history. Roy Williams pretty much was successful right out of the gate when he took over as Kansas's head coach in 1988, 19-12 in his first season, and pretty much never had that many losing seasons. Neither of these guys really did. It looks like Coach K missed the tournament. Let me see. So his first 3 seasons at Duke, I'm just looking at Duke.
Yeah, I believe he missed the tournament the first 2 or 3 years, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 3 seasons. I think he missed the tournament 6 total times with Duke. So
that's impressive because he's been in the tournament, NCAA tournament, 35 times.
Yeah, and his record in the tournament too, 97-30. It's just, I mean,
that's incredible.
These numbers, man, it's mind-boggling just to look at them, much less just make sense of them.
And that's why we have to discuss it here on the Kirby on Sports podcast, because
it's huge.
These are 2, if not already in the Hall of Fame, future Hall of Fame head coaches.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if they've already been in. I don't know how that process works, but they will be in the Hall of Fame at some point, hands down 110%. But, I mean, this is just, I grew up watching both these coaches. I mean, not all the time I would watch them, but still, I grew up watching these 2 coaches perform at their very best and provide a winning team, coach a winning team. And I was like, man, Coach K and Roy Williams, 2 of the best in the ACC.
Yeah, it's just hard to believe. I think that that both teams will be without him. But I think we all can agree that the game hasn't passed them by. I don't think that's the right word to use. I will say that for a long time, both these coaches were very much against the one and done system, especially Coach K, who was adamantly against it, just 10 years ago and a little bit before that. And then by the time Zion Williamson comes along, he starts to finally accept that this is the current state of college basketball. You have these fantastic players who are going to be NBA players in a year. They're going to be 18, 19 years old in the pros. And it seemed like he accepted it, and then now he's retired like 2 years after he kind of realized that that's the state of college basketball. But just to say, you can't understate how much these guys mean to not just college basketball, but the world of sports as far as their accomplishments. I mean, you're looking at, Roy Williams, 33 seasons coached, 903 and 264 win-loss. 903 wins. That's just absolutely insane. And again, a guy who started off his career, didn't make the tournament in his first season, but only missed the tournament 2 other times in his entire career. So 33 years, he only missed the tournament 3 times. It's just
incredible.
It's just insane. Of course, Roy Williams, 9 Final Four appearances, 12 for Coach K, and 3 titles for Roy Williams in 05, 09, and 2017. And then 5 championships for Coach K, 91, 92, 01, 2010, and 2015. And Duke's been there a bunch, and so is North Carolina. Obviously, you have 12 Final Four appearances with Duke, 9 with North Carolina. So it's just, these are 2 monumental guys in sports. You can't say that enough. You know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. I know North Carolina sort of made an in-house hire that I think a lot of people like. I can't remember if Duke's hired anyone yet or if they are.
I did not see anything.
Yeah,
when I was researching about this.
Oh, well, that's because that makes sense because I'm dumb because Coach K's coaching another year at the end of this year.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even realize that he's coaching one more, and then.
Oh wait, it's John Shire is the new head coach. Will be the new head coach for Duke.
Yeah. So one more and done. It's going to be a great. It's going to be. I think he's going to get a lot of standing ovations wherever he goes.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah. This is going to be a season where every place they play is going to be a last, and also like a fanfare each and every time, they play, especially at home. But I think even on the road, especially in the ACC, love him or hate him, he is. I think he's the greatest basketball coach of all time. I really have no doubt about that. I think Roy Williams is up there too. So, it's gonna be odd. It's gonna be really odd to see, how it all pans out. But
so Dan,
crazy.
My question to you, since you're follow the ACC a little bit more than I do you think with Coach K and Roy Williams, with Coach K eventually retiring, Roy Williams already retired, do you think this changes the state of the ACC? Could this lead to another potential contender in years to come, or somebody who just dominates the ACC like Duke and UNC has done for so many seasons?
Well, I think you've already seen that change the last 2 or 3 years. We've seen teams like Florida State, UVA. I think I put Virginia Tech in there, even though they haven't really gotten over the hump. There's a lot of really basketball teams in the ACC. And what we saw last year was that Duke and UNC were basically non-existent in the regular season. And Florida State was the best team in the ACC, followed by everybody else. So I kind of think that's been the writing on the wall for several years now. I think there's a lot of good basketball teams in that conference. I would be lying if I didn't say that I saw a team like UVA and think they're an immediate contender because, they still have Tony Bennett. They're really well coached basketball team, and they're in the thick of things every year in that conference. And so I do think this also, and this is another part of this, affects recruiting. I mean, you're going to have recruits who committed to these schools to play for Mike Krzyzewski and Roy Williams. What are they going to do? Are they going to decide to stay there, or are they going to explore other options?
That's a good point.
Because I really think the ACC has a lot of great teams within it. So I think there's a lot of room for recruits to move about in that conference. So to answer your question, even because I like running around your question and sort of not answering it directly, yes, I think there are going to be other teams who are contenders. And I think it's already happened, especially last year when it seemed like nobody wanted to win the conference. we had the top 3 or 4 teams in the ACC were really good, and then the rest were mediocre. It was kind of like football, really. Actually, the football was worse. So
yeah.
Anyway, I do think there will be other contenders in the conference. It's one of those that's interesting. They're like the NFC East of college basketball, I think, in a lot of ways. Hold on, stay with me here.
I'm confused already.
not because of mediocre play, but because a lot of people think that the NFC East is going to be very competitive this season, and I do agree with that. I think it's going to be very neck and neck, and I kind of think that's how the ACC is going to be. I don't see one team dominating. I see a lot of changes in power. So, I do think there's other contenders now, and imagine being those coaches who have to step in and fill those shoes. Imagine being John Shire and having to step in for Coach K at the end of this upcoming season. I mean, that's just daunting. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Roy Williams announced his retirement first.
Yeah, yes, Roy did. He had a very emotional press conference as well. They actually had a press conference. I don't think Coach K has had a press conference yet, if memory serves me correctly.
I think you're right. It was weird because it wasn't long after. So April 1st was when Coach K announced, Coach K, was when Roy Williams announced that he was going to step away. And I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago when Coach K announced his.
Yeah, just about that much.
So it makes you wonder if they were in discussion about sort of this too, just to kind of see where both of them end up. But
yeah,
so it's craziness though.
So once again, 2 legends leaving the game of college basketball. Coach Mike Krzyzewski with a record of 1,097 and 302 with the Duke Blue Devils, 35 NCAA tournament appearances, 12-time ACC regular season champions, 13-time ACC tourney champions, and 5 NCAA championships. Roy Williams in the conference 18 times with 7 conference tournaments, 9 Final Fours, and 3 national titles for the NCAA. 2 legends that are retiring. Roy Williams has retired, and Coach K soon to come. You're listening to the Kirby on Sports podcast. We'll be back with more right after this. Is it finally time to upgrade your home's interior? How about with an authentic farm table made locally from recycled barnwood? Shenandoah Primitives, based right here in Winchester, Virginia, makes farm tables, benches, tables, coffee tables, and a long list of other items for your home decorating needs. At Shenandoah Primitives, function and style are combined for great furniture that will last generations. If you're interested in combining the industrial look of metal with wood, or considering something incredibly unique with a live edge, Shenandoah Primitives turns those ideas into reality. Thinking about a mirror, wine rack, or other accent piece for your home, Shenandoah Primitives can assist with that as well. As a local small business, Shenandoah Primitives is happy to work with each client for a custom design or schedule an appointment to come out and view current inventory. Local, high-quality, handmade items can be found at Shenandoah Primitives. Find us on Facebook and Instagram, or visit us at www.shenandoahprimitives.com. Once again, that's www.shenandoahprimitives.com. All right, welcome back to the Kirby on Sports podcast. It's time now to get to my interview with Lake Lewis Jr. You can find him on Twitter at Lake Lewis. He is the owner and CEO of sportsjourney.com. So if you haven't heard of his work or heard of Lake Lewis, you need to go out to sportsjourney.com because his work is absolutely amazing. He's an insider for the Washington football team for his company, sportsjourney.com. And he has a lot of great knowledge in and around the Washington football team in regards to minicamp and the players around minicamp, just getting us closer to football season. We're going to keep it local, talking about the Washington football team with Lake Lewis of the sportsjourney.com coming up next. All right, welcome back to the Kirby on Sports podcast. Let's talk some Washington football. And here to help me break it all down is Lake Lewis Jr. He is the owner of Sports Journey and the host of the After Practice podcast. Lake, thanks for coming on. How are you, sir?
I'm good. And yourself? I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, sir. I mean, first and foremost, before we dive into the Washington football team and everything all about it, how does it feel to finally be back watching training camp? Because I know this whole pandemic was a mess last season in terms of coverage and covering the team from a distance and doing it safely. How does it feel to be back? Because I've been seeing on your Twitter, you're posting a lot of content and a lot of great content indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it feels good. It's kind of feels like a little bit of normalcy again. You know, it's not all the way back. You know, there's still half the team hasn't been vaccinated. So, you know, you can only get but so close. You know, I used to have guys running off the field literally during practice and come over and talk to you and then go back to practice. They can't do that now. So, but it feels good to be back out there, to be, within 10 feet away, from literally action. I posted some stuff from the end zone today where, guys literally were running right by me in the end zone. So as long as we can continue to do this, I think it gives fans like the real insight that they're looking for, and, hopefully gives them some good information about a team that has a lot of aspirations.
Yeah. So once again, Lake Lewis, the owner of sportsjourney.com. I took a look on your website a couple of times, listened to your podcast. I got to say, an incredible job with what you do. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got started and how Sports Journey came to be?
Oh man, it's a crazy story, but I used to be a drive time radio host on ESPN Radio in Florida, and my show was actually named Sports Journey with Lake Lewis. And, I decided that I may take a chance to, venture out on my own, so to speak. And, I had some contacts with Disney, and, they literally offered me to do my show from their ESPN club in front of a live studio audience. And, I talked to a couple of NBA guys that I was cool with that played for the Magic, and they were like, you need to go ahead and try to do this for yourself. And I did. And ironically, it was my sister that named my show back when I was on the radio. So she tries to take credit for all this stuff. But, that's how it started. And then, it just opened up different avenues. And, I covered the Baltimore Ravens before I covered Washington. And but being originally from DC, when I had the opportunity, the team offered for me to, be a beat reporter, cover them daily, be out there, travel, the games and everything. So, I couldn't pass that up. And I've been doing it. This will be my 10th season with the team this year.
So you're just so I get this 100% correct, you are an insider for the Washington football team for Sports Journey, correct?
Yes, for my own individual company. Yeah, my company is actually essential with all the major sports leagues. So I'm real proud about that. And I have reporters that cover different teams for me. So I'm definitely appreciative of that as well.
Yeah, I saw that too. It's not just Washington football team. You cover just about anything and everything. So with something like Sports Journey, does it give you sort of more flexibility on what you want to cover with the Washington football team and what you try to stay away from, as in terms of being employed by somebody else and them telling you what to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the main thing that it's allowed me to do from being, on that other side is at one point, at ESPN, also was a senior NFL writer, Washington football writer for USA Today, so, I mean, I've been in all those situations, those corporate situations. And yeah, sometimes you do feel like your hands are tied and you're kind of dictated to how things need to be. And I don't know if there's a journalist or a reporter alive that feels like they haven't at one point had to, budge, and give up something that they really wanted. Well, I don't do that at Sports Journey. And any of my reporters, I let them be themselves. And, I do have an etiquette set up with my company where there's just certain things we won't cross the line with. I'm very close with a lot of players, not just here, but around the country with different teams. And some of those guys call me as a man to talk about family issues, different things like that. And those are things that I'll never put out, but at the end of the day, I let them know I do have a job to do. And if it's something that, fans should know about, we put that out. But if it's something that's like more personal, I'm not into breaking stories just to say I did them, because I know things months before they even come out.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I know you can't go into detail, but months before it comes out, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I have players call me. I had I don't mind saying these things, but Morgan Moses was released, by the team. And I knew he was asking for his release before it came out. I knew all this stuff because he called me, his agent. So that's what it's about. You build relationships with people, and he wasn't calling me to have me put that story out. That's why you never saw it come out from me. But, some people say, how do you feel when you see supposed breaking news, but you already knew this. And I'm like, well, again, when you work for the corporate side of things, they have to have that out. And there were times in the past where those outlets needed me to have those things out. And I was like, I can't. It's just, it's fine line before, with what you can put out. And then there were times I did break things. I mean, when Deshaun Jackson came to Washington, him and his folks, I know them. They called me and said he's coming to DC and you can put that out. So boom, put it out, so you just have to be careful with what you're doing, before you burn some bridges and then you'll never get that back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 110%. I mean, doing this podcast, even as a hobby for me, because I do work full time, it's like building these connections and just doing it the right way. And sort of, in a sense, I don't really want to say I know everything about the business because I'm nowhere close, but I've talked to plenty of people that I know what the business is like and what you can and can't do. So I find that really interesting, your point of view and all that.
Yeah. I mean, you have to carve out your own niche at the end of the day. I mean, every two people are different. And I don't want to be like another reporter. I don't want someone to say, oh, your style is like, so-and-so. No. I like when people tell me, hey, I like your style. I like how you approach things. And, I tell people, if you're going to come and work for me and my company, I'm not saying you got to be like me, but from the ethical side of things, you have to be like me. I mean, there's just no, I've had guys come in from college and literally they're interviewing a Pro Bowler, an all-star. And they're like, I would never get this opportunity again, to do something like this. And I said, no, you're going to get this all the time unless you rub somebody the wrong way. So that's where you have to ask yourself, is it important for me to break this story to get my name in lights? Or is it important for me to build camaraderie within the locker room with the people I'm covering? Because now for every one or two players that you have a good relationship with, they're going to go and tell their teammates, hey, you can trust that guy. And then you get more stories that way.
Wow, that is very interesting. Once again, we're joined by Lake Lewis Jr. You can find him on Twitter at Lake Lewis. All right, let's talk Washington football, the local Washington football team. I mean, we all know the story, losing by 8 in the wild card to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are back in business. As a whole, first and foremost, Lake, what's the vibe from when voluntary minicamp was and mandatory minicamp is going on right now? What's the vibe? What's the atmosphere like with all the players and the coaches and stuff like that?
It was real intense today. Each day it's built itself up. Today they really were going after it. I'd say the defense probably got the better of the offense, but not by much. I mean, the defense looks good. Don't get me wrong, but the offense has made some exciting plays. And, Taylor Heineke had a really nice deep ball today to De'Ami Brown. He beat Benji St. Juice, a rookie out of Minnesota corner who yesterday probably had the biggest day, so to see these rookies stepping up and making big plays. Listen, they don't have pads on. It's mini camp. It's early, but there's a lot of young players out there that have been, really turning some heads, and that's what you want if you're a team that's aspiring to get better and get back in the playoffs and be a consistent perennial playoff caliber team. You need these young guys you're drafting to just keep adding on to what they are in-house. And I think that's what we've seen over the last 3 days. Each day it's gotten better. It's gotten more competitive. And today they really were chirping with each other, the offense and defense. There was a lot of trash talking going on, but it was all competitive, and that's what you want.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. So let's talk about Taylor Heineke. As in the wild card, he got the opportunity to start in that. He looked really small, but looking at now, it looks like he gained like 30 pounds of lean muscle. His arms just look insane. I mean, people are saying he's not fit to be a starter. I'm looking at his build. I can't say for sure, but I mean, looking at his arms, he's changed. I think he has a shot. He's ready to go. And I heard something, I'm not sure if this is correct, that Washington is going to have an open quarterback competition.
Well, that's what I'm hoping really does happen. Ron Rivera, since he's come here from day one, has said he wants to, usher in competition at each position. Well, from my eyes, the last 3 days, Taylor Heineke's looked like the best quarterback. I have no problem saying that. That doesn't mean that Ryan Fitzpatrick looked terrible or anything, or it's tragic. It's nothing like that. It's just that Taylor has done some really nice things. And, he has mobility, which is another added bonus to his game, which obviously we remember seeing against the Buccaneers on that end zone touchdown run. So, he's a guy that I think if he's given a fair shot, which I think they will give him, I think he can actually beat out Ryan Fitzpatrick. I truly believe that. I'm not saying he will, but I think that, just to flat out say that Ryan Fitzpatrick is the starting quarterback, if there is a quarterback competition, that's not fair to Taylor Heineke, nor is it fair to Kyle Allen. And whoever wins that job means they've played the best. And, whoever gets the job as the starter, the goal is for that person to start 17 games. So there's not going to be a quarterback carousel this year. They need that one guy to take the bull by the horns and be the guy for the season.
Yeah, absolutely. But looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick playing for so many different teams over the years, he could be a big help to Taylor Heineke if Heineke is sitting behind him or starting in front of him. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, they're all pushing each other, and that's what you want. You want guys that are going to make each other better on a practice by practice basis, not a week to week, game to game, but I mean like daily practice basis. And for me, again, I haven't seen anything from Taylor Heineke that makes me think he can't do this. He's not good enough to be the quarterback here. I totally disagree if anyone feels that way. I think that the guy, can do some things that are a little different from Ryan Fitzpatrick. Again, mobility plays a big part in things. And we saw a couple of rollouts in practice, last couple of days, and they were nice balls that he threw. Again, I mentioned the deep ball. That wasn't the only deep ball. He threw a couple of deep balls yesterday. So he's showing some arm strength, which I think a lot of us weren't sure about, how accurate, how strong is his arm. Forget the fact that, yes, he did put on 20 pounds and it's showing. He's jacked up right now. When I first saw him, I was like, that can't be Taylor. That just can't be, because he was thin last year. And then you see him now. Yeah, he put the work in, but that's what you want. He said right after last season, after the loss against the Buccaneers, that he knows what he needs to do in the offseason to get ready to have a chance, to compete for a starting job. And he was hoping they'd re-sign him. They did. They signed him to a 2-year deal. And he did his part. He got bigger. And that's the knock on him. That's the one thing that I think all of us are leery of, excuse me. And that's the fact that, he has a history of getting injured. So, can he stay healthy? His style of play is very, how can I say, freewheeling, so to speak, and I don't mean that from a passing standpoint. I mean, he'll give his body up. Some quarterbacks are endeared by doing that. And then some quarterbacks are like, hey, man, we need you to slide and get in the ground because we need you out there. I think he has to learn how to play a little bit more, smarter as far as when he runs and when he gets down. But I don't think it's a situation that was, say, like Robert Griffin from years ago. I don't think it's anything near that bad as far as getting down and protecting yourself. I think he gets that.
So one last thing before we move away from the quarterback talk. Kyle Allen had a gruesome injury last year, and has he been out there? What's his status like? Because I haven't really heard much about Kyle Allen.
Oh, he's been out there. He's been out there practicing, and surprisingly, yeah, he's been getting reps too. And he's made some decent throws. He's also put a couple up there. He'll gamble with the ball out there. But for me, again, I think this is all boiling down to Fitzpatrick. It's his job to lose. He'd have to play really bad in the preseason and throughout training camp in order to lose it. But I also think if people see with their own eyes what a lot of us have seen over the last 3 days with Taylor, you might hear some grumblings like, we're going to have an open competition here. But yeah, Kyle Allen has been out there to answer your question for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great to hear. Once again, Lake Lewis, you can find him on Twitter at Lake Lewis, owner of the sportsjourney.com and host of the After Practice podcast. I mean, I don't really think it was such a big deal, but still, I heard it on Twitter. Chase Young not making it to voluntary minicamp. Honestly, I don't think it was that big of a deal, but I feel like for people who did volunteer to go, which was a lot of people because they're behind head coach Ron Rivera, what difference does that make, if any, a leader such as Chase Young and the difference him not being there? I mean, is there such a big deal about that, Lake?
I mean, I think people were trying to make it a deal. I can just say as an older person, I wish he was there. But, as he said to us and after practice in our conference with him, he said that he had a couple endorsement things that he was dealing with, some shoots that he had been doing for, and I'm going blank as far as the companies. They're big boy companies, of course. So he was making some money. But he did say that he was in communication. His exact words were he was in coach with, Coach Rivera and Coach Del Rio. He was in contact with them the whole time. They knew what was going on. So those things happen from time to time. But he's been out on the field, the last 2 days, and he's been getting it done. I mean, he looks dominant, so I don't think that's an issue. I don't think anyone should ever question his loyalty to the team or, if he's a leader on this team, because he is, but, young people, that's a young thing that maybe you won't do next year. Maybe you'll get those endorsement companies to schedule things around your real schedule. So we'll see how that happens.
So Morgan Moses, no longer with the Washington football team, brings up questions about draft pick Samuel Cosmi from Texas. I've heard stuff like he might be set to be the day one starter. Looking at Cosmi's film from Texas, he looks impressive. But do you think the Washington football team needs to make other acquisitions to gain depth, or do you think they're ready to go?
No. They're ready to go. But he may not be the starter at right tackle. Today, last couple of days, we've seen a lot of Cornelius Lucas over at right tackle, and he's actually looked pretty good. So remember, Cornelius Lucas came in as a left tackle last year, played decent left tackle for them, down the stretch. But they're looking at him on the other side. And I don't know if it's an indication that maybe Cosmi's not ready, because, like I said, this is just minicamp. They don't even have their pads on. I think they're trying to look and see who could be the candidates to play right tackle. But it would not shock me if they actually went into the season starting Cornelius Lucas at right tackle and Cosmi being more of a depth reserve. You got to think that Sadiq Charles is another guy that can move around different positions. He can play guard, he can play tackle, he can play left tackle. So they've got a lot of interchangeable parts. Eric Flowers at one point played tackle before, he was moved inside to left guard. So, there's a lot of interchangeable parts on this offensive line that I think that, they've gone from an offensive line that needed depth to an offensive line that had so much depth that they moved on from Oregon.
I see. Okay. So, looking at this defensive line, incredible last season. Do they have enough to keep it going this season? Because their sack numbers were through the roof, and I feel like it's just going to stay that way this season.
Yeah, they should have more. The defensive line should generate more sacks this year. And, another year of Montez Sweat getting better, his third year, second year now from Chase. These are guys that should just recognize coverages a little better and get after it, just play even faster on the edges. But then, of course, in the inside, John Allen probably will have a contract in place before the season starts so he can relax and play ball. Deron Payne is just getting better and better in the middle. Tim Settle's another good reserve. And then, of course, a name that people keep forgetting about, they're bringing back Matt Ioannidis, who was injured last year in the first game against the Eagles. And I've always said this, from a motor standpoint and high energy, Matt was their best interior lineman. So now you bring him back in the fold, and they've got a lot of opportunities here. They drafted Shaka Toney out of Penn State. He's a guy that may be able to spell some guys too. So they've got some pieces. David Bada, another name that people aren't familiar with, has looked really good in these 3 mini camps. So they've got a lot going on that defense. It's going to be pretty scary this year.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing how powerful their defense can be. Looking at tight ends, last season it seemed to be the Logan Thomas show. I mean, nonetheless, he was incredible. Looks like they added depth at the tight end position. Ricky Seals-Jones seems to be having a good mini camp.
He does. I'm not sure if he'll make the final cut. I'm not sure. I mean, are they going to keep 3 tight ends, 4 tight ends? More than likely, they're keeping 3. I would venture to say that obviously Logan's your starter, and to me, I think he's primed for a Pro Bowl season this year. I really do. I thought he should have made it last year. But I think he gets to that point this year. And then, they draft the kid Bates, in the draft. And I think he'll be on the roster as well. I think he ultimately will be the number 2 tight end. They're going to have to coach him up a little bit and get him ready. But then there's Hemingway, who's another guy that a lot of people aren't familiar with, who I like quite a bit. And I think he's going to be the 3rd tight end. I think Samus Reyes will probably be on the practice squad. So I think those will be the 4 tight ends they go with Reyes being on the practice squad, and Hemingway, Bates, and Logan Thomas being your 3 at the position.
So speaking of weapons, moving from tight end to wide receiver, last season, it seemed to be just Logan Thomas and Terry McLaurin. But this year, they add Curtis Samuel, who played for Ron Rivera in Carolina. They draft Diami Brown from North Carolina. Whoever's under center this season for the Washington football team, they have a little bit more weapons to work with this year.
Oh, yeah. No. The wide receiving core actually could be a strength of this team. I mean, I know their speed is going to be amazing. Diami Brown is fast, and, he's streaking down the sidelines every time you look up. So, you pair him with Curtis Samuel, you pair him with, obviously, Terry McLaurin, their best offensive player. And then you can't forget about, Cam Sims has had a pretty decent camp so far, so, if you can keep that going throughout training camp, throughout preseason, he's a bigger target that's known to make tough catches. He does have a propensity to drop some easy balls, but he does make tough catches too. So if he can just hold on to the ball, that's another look. And then a name that people have totally forgotten because he got injured was Kelvin Harmon. But Kelvin Harmon is out there practicing and not looking bad. They brought in Humphreys as well, a guy in the slot. So the wide receiver spot's going to be some tough calls to make because, guys like Steven Sims Jr., who just 2 years ago you thought was going to be their long-term, slot guy, might not make this roster. And, so that's a good sign, though. That's a sign that this team is starting to have so much, depth, so much competition at each position. Names that you thought were going to be sticking around may not be because there's somebody better pushing them.
It seems like mini camp for the Washington football team is going well so far. After everything that the Washington football team has gone through, I feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel for this team for them to make a huge run in the next couple of seasons. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I actually think that they're, 10-7 football team this year, possibly 11-6. Some things go their way, and 10-7, because remember we have the extra game now, 10-7 or 11-6, that could win the division. I think the division will be better, will be much improved, but I don't know if it's going to be a 5-6, win improvement for any team. I mean, that's asking an awful lot, to do something like that, but to get a 3-4, more wins on the season, I think somebody's capable of doing that. And the question is it Washington?
Absolutely. Once again, Lake Lewis, owner of the sportsjourney.com and the host of the After Practice podcast. Lake, appreciate all the insight. Keep on doing what you do best, sir. Let's do it again sometime soon.
Sure. I appreciate you having me on, Josh. Anytime. I'll be there.
We'll be back right after this on the Kirby on Sports podcast.
Hey, sports fans. Thank you for listening to and supporting the Kirby on Sports podcast with founder and host Josh Kirby, along with lead contributor Dan Demski. Like, subscribe, and give them a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast from. My name is Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation. Our company helps leaders build engaged and productive teams. Exclusively for listeners of the Kirby on Sports podcast, you can take an opportunity to discover your primary communication style and learn more about effective communication with others. Text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free copy of the Working From Home Communication Assessment, where you'll learn your primary communication style, how to better communicate with others not like you, and tips on working remotely based on your personal communication style. 10 minutes, tons of resources. Learn about yourself and your team. Again, text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free assessment report today. I'm Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, where we help you and your team be more engaged and productive by understanding each other better. Back to you, Josh.
All right, welcome back to the Kirby on Sports podcast. Big thanks to Lake Lewis Jr. of the sportsjourney.com for coming on the Kirby on Sports podcast, talking about Washington football and minicamp. Once again, I'm Josh Kirby, joined by lead contributor and co-host Dan Demski. Find him on Twitter at Dan_Demski97. Let's wrap things up here, Dan. I want to talk short and brief about Scott Brooks and the Washington Wizards. The Wizards and Scott Brooks announced that they could not reach an agreement, and they have agreed to part ways. As a man and a guy, Scott Brooks, I feel like he was a very positive influence for fans in DC, but in his coaching, I sort of disagreed. I'm going to be honest. His coaching for the Wizards, even before the pandemic hit, it just wasn't there. The Wizards just were not looking good at all. Then into the pandemic and going into the bubble and doing that whole play-in stuff to get into the playoffs. I understand why they kept him due to the pandemic, but then keeping him one more after that, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is going to be the end, because that pandemic year, obviously they kept him, but with an 0.3% chance of making it into the playoffs, the Wizards make it into the playoffs, which is incredible. And hats off to the coaching staff, Scott Brooks. I'm sure he had a part in turning the team around also. But the Wizards still have a lot of work to do. The 76ers were just a way better team, and I knew from the start the Wizards were not getting out of the first round. So with that being said, I think it's time for the new ownership to pick a head coach for this Washington Wizards franchise, so this Washington Wizards franchise can stop being a dumpy team, because they're much better on paper than what they were this season, in my opinion. So, these are my brief thoughts on this, but the Wizards, they need a head coach that is in for the long haul to help this team rebuild and get back to the playoffs and winning 1, 2, 3 deep in the playoffs and competing for an NBA championship. But that might not be for 20 years, 20, 30 years. Who knows? I'm just being a realist here, but Washington basketball, sort of a sad day for some, because I know some people were upset because Scott Brooks had a good attitude and he was positive, but I just did not agree with him as a coach. And I'm sort of glad he's gone. Hopefully he will get another opportunity somewhere else. But Scott Brooks out after 5 years as the Wizards head coach. Dan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll start with what you said about this past season. You have Russell Westbrook and really beat two of the best guards in the Eastern Conference, if not basketball. I think you could argue that as well. They absolutely had off the chart seasons, both of those guys, but they didn't play any defense. They don't have any size.
Agreed.
And that was they got beaten up big time in the paint throughout the season, and they never made any adjustments, which good coaches go out and make those changes. And yeah, the Wizards snuck into the playoffs this year, 34 and 38 regular season record. And that's just kind of what it was and what sort of life was like for Scott Brooks and the Wizards, when he came to Washington in 2016. And his first season with the team, there's a good sign there. They make the playoffs. They have 13 playoff games. They make the playoffs again the next season. They went 49 and 33 in 2016-17. And then after that, it was just kind of sour after that. And 3 straight losing seasons these last 3 years, and just no improvement, I think, overall. What stands out to me is the 10-14 playoff record he's had in Washington, which it pretty much speaks for itself. In the times that they did make the postseason, there's no winning there. There was no consistency in that area. Compare that with, a lot more experience with Oklahoma City, obviously 39 and 34. At least he had a winning record in the postseason there. And yeah, a .469 winning percentage with Washington is subpar. So they just never improved. They never had that fire lit under them. I thought if this was going to be the season, if they were going to have it, they have Westbrook and Beal, and both guys stayed pretty healthy for the most part. Beal had some injuries here and there, but played a good chunk of the season. Westbrook played just about every minute, it seemed like, and had a triple-double every night. But it doesn't make a difference if you can't coach defense and you can't find, good big men to fill in the hole. Then the Wizards were always going to be a below-average basketball team. And I think what they need to do is sort of go with a young guy, a guy who people don't know about. Because I think the big mistake they're going to make here is they're going to go with one of those old ex-coaches who either just got fired or who's been in the queue for a couple years, looking for a gig. I have a feeling they might make that mistake because it's. I hate to say it, and I don't want to bash your city here, but Washington sports teams tend to do these types of things.
Oh, trust me, I hear it all the time on Twitter. I hear it all the time. If I don't hear it in person or over Zoom on a podcast, it's on Twitter. I hear it all the time from yours truly.
Yes. What can I say? Yeah, it's, that's all I have to say after you're just going to roast me like that. But
I wasn't trying to roast you there, but still.
Yeah, I know. I thought when they hired him, great hire. He made the playoffs 5 of the last 6 years. He was in Oklahoma City, including a Western Conference title and nearly a championship in 2012. But so I thought at the time it was a good hire, but it just depended on, how is he going to coach this basketball team? And it just never worked out. And he is a great guy. I do think he will, if he doesn't get a head coaching job somewhere, he's good enough to be an assistant coach in this league. Or maybe he could land somewhere else and be a head coach for an organization that, has a couple more pieces. I think that's what the Wizards are missing. They're missing 2 or 3 other more pieces. And obviously with the basketball team, those 2 or 3 pieces make a big difference because basketball, there's only 5 players playing at a time. If you have 2 or 3 solid players, you're going to be pretty good. So it's not shocking. And I think it's the right direction that Washington needs to move in.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't believe I have any more to add, but it was just incredible to see the Washington Wizards make it into the playoffs after the atrocious start they had to the season.
Yeah, I mean, the East was bad this year. I don't think there's any debate with that. And just comparing the Eastern Conference to the Western Conference, if you just looked at the playoff seedings, it was insane how so many bad teams were right in the running there of getting into the postseason. So it's not really that much of an accomplishment. I get what you're saying, but they were definitely not the better team in that series against Philly, and Philly just dominated them from start to finish, just about, minus the one game. So, I mean, it is what it is. I think as far as Scott Brooks, he's a great guy. I think he reached his peak when he was in the Western Conference Finals, and won the Western Conference with Oklahoma City. I don't know. Yeah, that's hard to do multiple times in the NBA, just based upon how the NBA is structured. So, I do think he'll land somewhere, but I kind of see him as more of an assistant coach, or maybe do something more of an executive role even. He has that kind of personality where I could see that, but we will find out. I think Washington, like I said, you have to go young. You have to go with the guy that a lot of people don't know. Someone who has a bright explanation for what they want to do with this basketball team, moves they want to make, and ways they want to change the team. Because I think that's one thing they're missing is, someone within that coaching staff who has more of an executive outlook. I know that's a little frightening for fans to hear. It would be frightening if you heard like Ron Rivera say that, right? Because you have the Washington football team owner, who's like got his hands in everything and gets in the way and creates issues. Mm-hmm. When you have the Wizards owner just wants to kind of, Leonsis just kind of wants to step back and not be a big part of it as far as the day-to-day decisions are concerned, which I think is a good idea. But he doesn't have the right people below him to run the ship, if you will. So I think that's one thing they've got to get straightened out, and I think they will get it straightened out here in the future.
All right, I believe that is all the time we have on this edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast. Dan, it was a lot of fun, brother.
Yes, sir. It definitely was, man. Thanks for having me on again, and looking forward to doing this again soon, brother.
Yeah, always a pleasure to get you on, and thanks again to Lake Lewis Jr. of the sportsjourney.com for coming on to talk Washington football team minicamp. That is all the time we have on the Kirby on Sports podcast. Until the next time you hear us, make sure you always check us out on all social media platforms, all streaming platforms. You can check us out on our new website, www.kirbyonsports.com. Big thanks to our sponsors, as always, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation. Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, always remember to create greatness. So long and peace out.